All right, take out one hand and count how many fingers you have. Everybody knows, but we'll do it real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 fingers. Now, I want you to count how many spaces you have in between each of your fingers. So count those out. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 5 fingers with 4 spaces in between. I want you to flip your hand so it's sideways like that. What we're going to do is we are going to connect our fingers and the spaces between our fingers to our music lesson today. So in music, when we are learning our notes, we've learned the names of these notes when we're talking about how many beats they get, but we haven't learned their alphabet letter names. Okay, so remember the last lesson that we had was about the musical alphabet. And I taught you all that the musical alphabet is shorter than our regular alphabet because it only contains letters A through G, right? So those letters are also named on our notes when we put them on something called the staff. And I'm going to show you what the staff looks like in just a second. But for now, we're going to call our hand staff. I have a little chant that's going to teach you about the hand staff. So on the staff in music, it has 5 lines, and then in between the lines are 4 spaces. So hand staff chant, the beginning of it goes like this. Hand staff, 5 lines, 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Now, like I mentioned, every line and space in the staff has a letter name, what we'll name our notes when they're sitting on those lines and spaces. And if it were easy, they would just go A through G in order, but it's not that easy. There's a special pattern we're gonna have to learn, and I'm gonna give you some tips and tricks to help you remember it. So on the lines, we start always on the bottom line up to the top, and the pattern goes like this. E, G, B, D, F. Like I said, they're not in the alphabetical order that we usually know, but there's a special little saying that's going to help you remember the order of those letters. So one more time, the letter order is E, G, B, D, F. Now, the saying that I use and a lot of music teachers use to help you remember the order is this saying. Every for the E, good for the G, boy for the B, does for the D, and fine for the F. Every good boy does fine. Can you hold up your hand staff and say it with me? We're just touching the lines. Ready? Every good boy does fine. E, G, B, D, F. Now, there's our lines. The spaces are a little bit easier because starting on the bottom space, they spell out F, A, C, E. And what does F, A, C, E spell? Face, right? So point to your spaces on your hand staff with me and let's spell face. F, A, C, E. Okay, so putting the whole hand staff chant together, it goes like this. Hand staff, 5 lines, 4 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're gonna say the order of the lines. E, G, B, D, F. And the spaces. F, A, C, E. Now, you can draw your own staff super, super easy. So go ahead and get out your paper and a pencil, and we're going to draw our staff, okay? Remember, the staff is the set of lines and spaces that our music notes will sit on. Now, I'm gonna draw mine on the board behind me. You can draw it on your paper. How many lines were we going to draw on our staff? Do you remember? How many lines? 5 lines, okay? So that's what we're going to do now. So go ahead and draw yourself 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what I want you to do is I want you to close it off on both sides. So there is our staff, okay? You can count them, 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then the spaces in between. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, today's staff that we're learning about has a special symbol. Some of you might have seen this symbol before. It looks like this. Does anyone know what that symbol is? It's called a treble clef, okay? Treble clef. Can you say that? Treble clef. Now, the treble clef is important for us to know because it tells us the names of our lines and spaces. There's another clef we're gonna learn later that looks like that, and that is called the bass clef, okay? Those are gonna have different letters for their lines and spaces, but I don't wanna get too far ahead because treble clef is what we are going to focus on right now. So on your staff, can you draw me a note, just like a whole note on the bottom line, and it has to have the line going through it, and then draw one on the second line, on the third line, on the fourth line, and on the fifth line. Now remember, we're always gonna go bottom to top. So if I say first line, I'm talking about the one on the bottom. If I say second line, that means I'm gonna count from the bottom. 1, 2. If I say fourth line, I have to count from the bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so just remember that, always going bottom to top. And then our order of our notes, we're gonna write those letters again that we learned. So every good boy does fine. So by your bottom note, I want you to write the E for every. And then your next word was good, which is your G. The next line is boy. Your next line is boy, so put your B. Then you have does, so that's letter D. And then the top one is, the word is fine, letter F. Those are the lines in our treble clef. E, G, B, D, F. Every good boy does fine. Okay, now we're going to draw our notes in the spaces, okay? Now you can keep using the same color that you're using if you're using a pencil or a pen or something, but just so you can see it a little bit better, I'm gonna draw my spaces in a different color. So I'm just gonna go from bottom space to top space, and I'll start right here. So my bottom space is here. So I'm gonna draw a note there, and then I'm gonna draw a note in my second space, third space, and fourth space. Now remember, the space spells the word face, and you can kind of remember that because space and face rhyme. So again, we're going from bottom to top. So what's the first letter of our word face? It's a F. So draw an F next to your space on the bottom. Next letter for face is A. So draw your A there. Next letter is C. And then your top space is a letter E. Okay? Now I know it's a lot, but we're gonna be reviewing this over and over and over. It'll be so easy for you to remember it after a lot of practice, okay? So one more time, treble clef. We've got our staff, 5 lines, 4 spaces. We've got our line notes starting from the bottom. Every good boy does fine. And then we've got our space notes spelling face from the bottom to top. F-A-C-E.